Well, hi everybody, and welcome to this edition of Sports Talk. I'm Jimmy Allinder, and the gentleman who normally occupies the seat that I'm in is actually seated to my right. His name is Phil Hill, and he is our guest. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Hill.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it really is my pleasure. Well, Mr. Hill, let's not keep our audience in any suspense. Let's tell them why you're here.
Well,
and I'll let you do that.
Well, I'm here, I think, Jim, after 16 years of doing, at least starting off with football and eventually boys basketball and girls basketball. I've decided to let somebody else have an enjoyment now. I really have enjoyed my years, certainly with John Megliaro in the beginning, and of course you, and part-time with Gordy, and it's been very enjoyable. I just think everything changes. I mean, Channel 8 has changed. EBTV 3 starting October 1st.
Thanks for the plug.
They're changing. And I just think it's time for me to allow someone else to enjoy themselves and for me to do some other things.
Well, Phil, before we get into some specific questions, I'd like to give you an opportunity to give the audience a little bit of some personal information about yourself. We've never really dug in and found out a lot about you, but I can give you my first recollection of you, and it goes back to, well, I think probably 1963, 64.
Okay.
It was Thanksgiving Day, and it was at Rutgers Stadium,
Okay.
and it was the annual Thanksgiving contest football between South River High School and New Brunswick High School, which is where I went to, and I saw this amazing catch, one of a number of catches that particular day, and it was Phil Hill that made that catch. And Phil Hill and South River football, that's kind of where it all began with you, huh?
It all began with me there, that's for sure. And for a lot of other young fellows that have gone on, everything began at South River or with the Pop Warner League. But that jump from there to here, my personal life really is a serious one. I'm employed with the Administrative Office of the Courts in Trenton, and most of my professional career I've dealt with young people who have run afoul of the law, and I deal with what we call now intensive supervision. I've been a chief probation officer for Atlantic and Cape May counties. I've been a commissioner for juvenile justice in New York City. I run a detention center, a violent juvenile offender program. So a lot of the calls that I get and a lot of the dealings that I have with youngsters, it may be somebody calling me, telling me about a death of a youngster in Patterson, or a youngster, worse yet, a youngster committing homicide, or someone down in Camden that may be homeless and so forth. So a lot of my dealings with youngsters are around serious matters. So basketball and football for East Brunswick High School has been my outlet, you know, where I can do something rather light and enjoyable. And as I said, I've enjoyed it for a number of years. Well,
it's interesting that you jumped from the focus being on you to some of the problems that you have to face in your livelihood. But as far as your education is concerned, some of the sports that you played, talk about a little bit about that.
I've been around great athletes, as you know. You mentioned my brother-in-law earlier, and then my brothers. I had super brothers, Troy, All-Stater, Carl, an All-Stater, Max, a very good football player. I think I was probably the least of all my brothers. I mean, I had good speed and whatnot, injury prone. Right. Same thing with college. I went to college in South Carolina and ended up fracturing the shoulder there. Part of my
University of?
No, this is Allen University.
Allen University.
A small school in South Carolina.
Okay.
And whereby once you got hurt, your scholarship money was sort of taken away, and I wasn't used to that. So my career ended soon, too soon.
Right. And of course, you talked about your brother-in-law, Drew Pearson. Right. Married well, by the way. We'll talk a little bit about that if we have some time. You know, we've worked together for so many years. What is it, 16?
16 years,
1985 is when you first started?
84, 85,
yeah. Okay. Covering both football and boys and girls basketball, and maybe a couple other sports thrown in along the way. Did you have a favorite sport?
You know, I'm inclined to say football, but I learned to enjoy them all. I mean, there's been some very enjoyable basketball, boys basketball, and certainly girls basketball. I guess football would have to be it. I mean, those were some of my roots. All my brothers were involved in it, so I particularly liked following football.
Right. Can you pick out one specific highlight during the 15 years that we've covered the sport of any sport in particular? Anything that stands out in your mind?
There will be something that will always stand out in my mind, and I think it was because it's my first year. It might have been my first game. I think John Magliaro had said, we're going to have a playoff game, or I don't know if it was a Thanksgiving or a playoff game. Do you want to be the third man in the booth and join us? And I said I'd like to. And soon thereafter, I got to see a state playoff game between J.P. Stevens and East Brunswick. I think 1984, I believe, and a game in which the Bears lost 27-26. And probably the thing that will stick into my mind forever, and a lot of East Brunswick fans as well, is people like to say that Derek Rowe dropped the ball. I don't know that he dropped the ball. I don't think he ever really had the ball. But I remember during that game, and I remember seeing very clearly, and we mentioned it, that you could see the ray of sunlight that was shining on that section of the field there. Derek never saw the ball. Of course, that two-point conversion would have meant that the Bears would have had their first sectional state title, and they came that close. So I think that will stick with me for a long time.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's a negative. But, but Derek Rowe, an outstanding football player, and I'm sure his teammates and certainly for him, that will be something that will stick with him for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you answer this? What's been the funniest or most embarrassing situation that you can remember in your broadcasting career?
One of the funniest is, I can't say on air, I think it was something John Magliaro said trying to pronounce a youngster's name, and I think you recall
I do recall, yeah.
But there are a lot
about
of
physical anatomy.
Right.
Got
there
it.
are a lot of moments. Probably one of the most interesting is I don't know if you remember about 1987, Brick Township. We went to do a game. Very seldom do we take the crew on the road that far.
Oh, sure.
And we went down to Brick.
Yeah.
And Brick, Jim, we were up, and it was the hottest, stickiest day that you could ever imagine. There were bugs around us all sorts of way. Our clothes were sticking to us, and I just thought that is something that I'll never forget. That was, it wasn't funny, but it was one of the days that will always stick in your mind.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, there was a lightning storm
And
that
exactly.
Yeah.
It was like no other night we ever had.
night. Yeah, East Brunswick won that game.
And
by the
they
way.
won the game.
Yeah.
Of course, you can talk about the hot days, but you can also talk about the very cold days. You can talk about Madison Central, those nights in the stands, how cold it was, and we had to do the game. Or you can talk about Serval. On top of that roof there, with no border, and the wind blowing late in November, and the wind chill minus something, and nevertheless we're there trying to do the game. So I got a lot of different things that sort of stick in my mind about the games.
Well, obviously, hosting an in-studio show such as this for many years is quite different than telecasting on a field of play or actually in a basketball court. In your years, was there anything you did differently as far as preparation? Before I even ask you to answer that question, something that always impressed me about the way you came to a basketball game or football game was the preparation. Reams of paper you would arrive with, depth charts, things that would take, in my mind, a lot of phone calls, a lot of visits, a lot of hours, and it certainly consumed a lot of your time, and you were extremely professional in that. But anyway,
Well,
answer the question on
I don't know how professional I was, Jim, and I'll talk about that. But trying to be prepared, I did. I would gather as much information as I could. I read somewhere from Jerry Eisenberg where he talked about doing your homework if you're going to be prepared. One of the reasons that I'm sort of backing up now, Jim, is that I don't have the luxury of being prepared. I found myself running to games with 5 minutes before a game is there, or calling Cindy and saying, "Hey, I'm on the road. I'm at exit 8A. I'll be there. I'll be there shortly." But you're right. It calls for reaching out to the opposing coaches and our coaches as well to get information and so forth. And if you can't prepare, my feeling, if you can't prepare yourself like that, then you're doing perhaps a disservice to the people. So one of the reasons I'm sort of backing up, I just don't have that luxury any longer.
And it's so true. I think all of us, even as parents as well as those with livelihoods, feel a type of pressure, if you will, to devote what you can to that profession without compromising
Exactly.
on the volunteer work that we do, and you feel it, and all the more credit to you for thinking along those lines. Was there ever a particular individual that you patted yourself after during your broadcasting?
Honestly, no. I never considered myself a broadcaster. First of all, Jim, you should know as well as anyone, we didn't necessarily follow the normal route that broadcasters take. For years, you allowed me to talk over you in my exuberance and never said a word.
Oh yeah, I said it occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally you said something, not too often. But standardly, if you're going to really prepare and go to broadcasting school or to learn how to do it properly, there's a right way of doing things. The stuff I did, I knew I could get away with, and I was allowed to, from my mercies on down to, as I said, talking over you when I got excited about something. And most stations, I don't think, will allow for stuff like that. Here at Channel 8, I was a local lad, and and we just had fun.
That's true. There are a lot of pros and cons about, for lack of a better word, the verbal posture that broadcasters take or should take, especially on the local level when it comes to describing what's on the air. There's some people that believe that we should only talk about the positives and ignore the negatives during a broadcast. How do you feel about that?
I think we should talk about the game, the action that's taking place. I mean, if there's something negative in regards to the game, it's how you couch it is very important. But I like the late John Haley's school of thought, where he felt that try to say something positive about the youngsters, and if you had something negative to say, don't use the youngsters' names. As a newspaper guy, you know that. So I don't think it serves any purpose. You got to remember, these are kids. These are young kids that are out there and their families. And I found out from going around through town that they really do look at the shows. They really do look at the shows, and I get a lot of feedback about what we did right or what we did wrong, or can we do another, are we going to do a playoff game and things of that sort. I think you got to be very careful what you say and how you say it.
Do you think that your livelihood, your profession, has given you a sensitivity to being as positive as you possibly can on air?
I think I'm a positive person anyway, Jim. I think maybe so. I certainly have to be sensitive in my line of work to the families and the young people that we deal with, and you also have to be sensitive here. I think I've gained something. A lot of my dealings are with family court judges and attorneys, and then I come and I deal with teachers and coaches, and they all have egos. They all have egos and whatnot. Some just are a lot larger than others. I think the preparation that I've had in the court system has made it a lot easier for me when I do my volunteer work.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
What has changed over the years as far as what you've been observing when you air sports?
I think when we first started airing, the fact that there was real excitement, I think people take it for granted now. I think they take it for granted because there's so many areas and so many schools that are doing it. But when we first started, I get a lot of feedback about it and if we are going to do a game. And I think now people take it for granted. I said a long time ago that if I knew that game that I was playing in was going to be televised, and I could sit down and look at it and have popcorn with my family or my girlfriend or whatever, I know that'd at least be 75 more yards per game for me, easily. You know, because you're open. Everybody's going to see how you perform and whatnot.
Sure.
So I think that would make a big difference. I think expectations to parents tell us everything from how to say their youngster's name, pronounce the youngster's name correctly. Probably if I had something to do over, Jim, again, it would be recognition for people who don't get recognized. In football, it certainly would be the linemen.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do because we're like everybody else. We follow the action, but they're the ones that start everything.
Right.
And trying to do, if I had to do it over again, doing a better job of identifying those people. I've learned along the way that the most gratified people aren't the families and the youngsters that you mention their names all the time, not the stars. It's the youngster that you mention their name one time.
So true.
And a parent will come up to you and say, listen, I want to thank you so much for mentioning my youngster's name. I don't even recall that I mentioned the youngster's name, but those are the parents that are grateful. So I think if I had to do it all over again, it wouldn't be concentrating so much on the stars, but also trying to give more balance to all the youngsters that participate.
Okay, it sounds pretty good, and it's a lesson that we should follow. And on that subject of parents, we're both parents of children who've either participated or are participating in high school sports, such as my son. How difficult, you know, your son Justin played last year. I know your daughter was a cheerleader a couple years ago. How difficult was it to separate yourself from, you know, being a broadcaster to being objective about what's going on in the field of play?
I think the problem is, Jim, it's almost like a parent coaching their child. You tend to try to err on the other side. You may be more critical of something that your youngster does, or if there's a tackle there and it appears that it could have been Justin, but it also could have been someone else, then you're reluctant to give Justin credit for the tackle. So if anything, I think as far as I'm concerned, I was very conscious of not mentioning Michelle too much while she was cheerleading or over-talking Justin while he was playing.
Yeah, it's tough. It really is. I'm finding that out.
You'll see.
Yeah, although I don't have to broadcast over in Monroe, thankfully. That's okay. And on the subject of parents, what's your feeling about how involved they should be? We're getting into a deep subject here, I know, but what I'm driving at is that we've noticed that parents have become perhaps overly involved with what's going on the field of play and as far as their communication with coaches. What's your feelings on that?
I think parents should be parents. I think the same thing, the same way you would deal with a teacher is perhaps the same way you should deal with a coach. Coach is basically the same thing. A teacher, he has your youngster in his or her care, and if you have some concerns about it, you should speak to the coach. On the other hand, we've seen recently, if it's South Brunswick with the soccer incident where parents were getting involved, and Boston with the hockey incident where parents got physical, and a lot of different basketball games where you hear verbally parents have been assaultive to officials or opposing teams and whatnot, and that's out of line. I think you should basically deal the same way you would deal with a teacher if you have a concern.
Okay. All right, let's move to another little bit of a subject here. For those that don't know, as we mentioned, your brother-in-law is a rather successful businessman, and he is a former professional athlete. His name is Drew Pearson. Talk about your association with Drew through the years.
Oh, it's easy. First of all, I was sort of a mentor to Drew. Drew was a snot-nosed kid running around South River. I was the person who told Drew that he should play quarterback. He didn't particularly want to play quarterback at South River High School. I told him to give it a chance. Of course, the rest is history. He became an All-Stater. Drew's a great guy, and I don't say that, of course, he's my brother-in-law. People that know him, he's just a great guy with a big heart, and he's been very fortunate, very successful businessman, and now he's very excited about this prospect with the XFL. And I get a lot of people asking me questions, you know, why would Drew connect himself with something that's going to be staged? You can't stage football, Jim. You and I have been around football long enough to know you can't stage it.
Yeah.
And if you could see some of the kids, young people that are interested in playing in this league, people who work for Bristol Myers Squibbs and Merrill Lynch who are taking a leave of absence to see if they can fulfill a dream and so forth, then you get to see how real it is. As far as Vince McMahon, they say, well, what about Vince McMahon and what he does with the World Wrestling Federation and whatnot? He's a businessman. He's a very successful businessman, and it's about constituency. He has a following. He's no different than a politician. All you need is a following to get elected. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have any special education or anything else. He has that following. He's made it work for him. Can he do it for the XFL? I think he's going to jazz it up a little bit, but the common denominator is it's football. When you get out there, it's violent, it's physical, and it's football.
Right. And then the Football League's going to be running from February to March?
February for about 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
what
And
an undertaking.
It's quite an undertaking. And it's no different. You had the World Football League and some others, and it's an opportunity. They're fortunate to have NBC in their pocket on this, so the games will be televised. I said to a person at the South River Spotswood game the other day that said, Drew's not going to be involved with that stuff, is he? It's business. It's business. Drew has his headwear. He has signed a contract that all WWF and XFL headgear has to be bought from Drew Pearson companies. So it's business. It's business. Philip Morris, I made the analogy. Philip Morris does a lot. If you look at the commercials, they're doing a lot of good things to help people. And let's say they're a cigarette company. Vince McMahon is what he is, Vince McMahon, but he's gone into football. He's also said he would like to ultimately buy the Boston Red Sox. I've met him. He's charismatic and a very powerful man.
Well, let him buy the Red Sox. You know what they say about Boston. Anybody can have a bad century. But anyway, do you have any plans to return to the broadcasting booth or in any way, any capacity?
Well, I really haven't left, Jim. I mean, basically, I'm still going to do sports talk.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think there was to be a show here, and one of the reasons it's sort of a fill-in.
Fill-in, I get it.
Yeah, fill-in. But I plan on doing sports talk periodically. And as I said, I'm on call. I'm on call for emergencies. Thanksgiving games particularly.
Yeah, we like them, don't we?
But I'll be around.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Final question, any advice you would give to anybody who is aspiring to become involved in broadcasting?
I think do it the right way, prepare yourself. For me, this is a hobby. I was fortunate that I was asked at the time, did I want to participate? I do a lot of speaking in my professional life, so it sort of carried over. But learn how to do it the right way.
Okay.
And prepare yourself.
Well, listen, friend, I want to thank you very much for all that you've done for me through the years as well. You've been a mentor to me, believe it or not, and I very much appreciate it. Going to miss you, but you may be getting a phone call on occasion. And again, all the best to you in your future endeavors, and just wanted to thank you very much. Okay, you're a pro.
I want to thank you too, Jim. You and John have been great. Sort of took me under your wings when you came. You're still going strong. I sort of admire that, and I'd like to wish you well as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of Sports Talk. Excuse me. For Phil Hill, the last time. This is Jimmy Allinder saying thanks for being with us.
Good afternoon and welcome to Edison High School, where this afternoon the East Brunswick High School Bears take on the J.P. Stevens Hawks for the Group 4 Central Jersey State Championship. Hi, I'm John Megliaro, and I'll be bringing you the play-by-play. And joining me this afternoon for this championship game will be, to my far right, left rather, Jimmy Allinder, reporter from the Sentinel, and Phil Hill, who's joining us for today's game. Phil, former South River High School star and former official, will be joining us in terms of bringing his expertise about the game.
Tony Ascentino, though, one of the classiest coaches in all of Middlesex County and an outstanding coach, has had a tough time in the red division, though. Tony Ascentino has come in and he's for the second year in the red division and just really hasn't done that well. I expect to make that adjustment. They have a very good size, and they have an all-conference back in Sanford Boatman, and Sanford Boatman is a young man who has scored every way possible last year with the exception of a punt return. So anytime he gets his hands on the ball, you're going to have to watch out for him.
Are we going to have a game here this afternoon?
I think we're going to have a game, Jim. This is a different Edison Eagle team. I think on January 27th, they found themselves when they beat up on Piscataway by 10 points. A couple days later, they beat Bishop R as well. And since then, they've won 11 consecutive games. This is a team that believes in themselves. They feel they're on a mission, and I think we're going to have a competitive game. We're here with the honoree, Josh Miller, and his coach, of course, Marcus Borden. Josh, just got to ask you, you've had a lot of super accomplishments come your way. How does this rank up there with those?
To be truthful, I was telling Coach Borden beforehand that this is the nicest thing that I've ever received. It really hit home, and as I was driving here, I was thinking of where it all started, and I remember coming in, being a guy 6'3", 172 pounds, saying, Coach, you know, you don't know me from Adam, but I'm a soccer player, and I really would like to maybe kick field goals for you. And we went out back, and he saw I might have kicked about 7 balls, and he said, you got the job.